Okay, that's zero product property rule. If you have two numbers that multiply together and the answer is 0, then what do you know about one of those two numbers? Correct. One of them has to be 0. So in this example, I'm multiplying this number times this number, and the answer is 0. So if I'm multiplying these two numbers together and the answer is 0, then that proves that either this number has to be 0 or that number has to be 0. So your job is to figure out what the x would have to be, that it's going to make that parentheses equal to 0. Well, you could probably look at it and go, what plus 2 equals 0? Well, x could be -2. If we have this parentheses, x minus 4, then that x, the x could be 4. So you have two possible answers. You could have your x at -2, or you could have your x at 4. This is the smaller one, that's the bigger one, because that's negative and that's positive. Now, if x was -2, this would be 0, that wouldn't be, but 0 times anything equals 0. If x was 4, that would be 0 times anything, that would still be equal to 0. So there's my two answers. If you can do them in your head, awesome. If they're like this, it might be a little more difficult to do in your head, although you'll get better at it. We still have two numbers multiplying together to get 0. So 3x plus 2, we have to find out the x that would make that equal to 0, or 2x minus 5, we would figure out what x that needed to be 0. We'll solve both of them. Over here, I would subtract 2 from both sides, divide by 3, and your x is equal to -2/3. Over here, you would add 5 to both sides, divide by 2, and x equals 5/2. Now, that's that's positive 2.5, that's -2/3, that's the smaller one, that's the bigger one. That's zero product property rule, all right? That's the first column that I assigned for, well, that would be for today. All right, some of you already have this done. Now, the next one would be, what if it's written in quadratic form? All right, like standard equation. So, I have a couple more examples. Let's just take x squared plus 4x plus 5 equals 0. And it has to be equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, then you subtract or add everything to one side. You want your x squared positive, but we got to get that sucker equal to 0. So we look at this, and we're trying to find the two things that multiply together to get 0. Well, in my head, x squared, we know, is x times x. This goes back to last chapter. All right. Actually, I need to make this a -5 to make it work. So two numbers that multiply together to get -5, that add up to be 4. Well, if I have positive 5 and -1, if you FOIL that out, x times x is x squared, that would be 5x, that would be -1x, that's your 4x, 5 and 1 make -5. So there's my two parentheses. And now I have to use the zero product property rule. This one, x would have to be equal to -5. And over here, x would have to be equal to 1, smaller factor, larger factor. All right? Now, my next example is going to be, what if we stick a number in front of this? So let's do one more here. I'm just going to replace these. So now this is a 3x squared, a 7x, and a -6. All right. Now, if you remember from a couple weeks ago, we made the x. All right, we did 3 times negative 6. That was negative 18. It has to add to be positive 7. So I'm looking for factors or numbers that multiply together to get 18 that add up to 7. 3 times negative 6 was the negative 18. All right, well, how about 9 and 2? If I have a positive 9 and a negative 2, that adds up to be positive 7. So there would be my two numbers that multiply and add. You take the first number and put it on bottom, and then you reduce these fractions. Well, 9 over 3 reduces to positive 3 over 1, and that one doesn't reduce. So now remember, these are your parentheses. These are your factors. So this would be 1x plus 3. And this over here would be 3x minus 2. All right, so x plus 3, 3x minus 2. Does it work? Well, x times 3x is 3x squared. That makes 9x minus 2x, which makes 7x, and 3 times 2 is 6. So yeah, it works. So here's my factors. So this one, obviously, x is negative 3. And over here, I take 3x minus 2 equals 0, add the 2, divide by the 3, and x is 2/3. So x is negative 3, and x is positive 2/3. That was an equal sign. So smaller factor, larger factor. If this is a perfect square, then you'll only have 1x. And I know there's a couple of them on there as well. So here's your zero product property rule and some factoring. Make sure that sucker is equal to 0, and that should take care of the next 3 counts. All right, I'm going to assign a quiz today as well. It's Google form, 10 questions, all multiple choice. You'll have to select the answers, but do your cons first. Make sure you understand. You only get one shot at the quiz, no retakes. So good luck. Email me, text me if you have any questions. Other than that, hope you have a good week.